Jai Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Pavan Janardan Maharaj Ki Jai.
Vandeyam Shri Guru Shiyatha Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabhadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Baran Sahagana Lalita Shivashakam Vitamscha Om Agyana Timarandasya Yanachana Shalakya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Gaurva Bhistam Supurakam Gurganara Sesha Sambhushitam Chintya Chintya Samasta Veda Nipanam Shri Rupa Patanugam Govindam Vidam Ujwalam Varatanum Bhaktyan Vidam Sundaram Mande Vishwagurun Shah Divyat Bhagavad Premna Vebija Pradam Devam Divyatanam Suchandavaranam Balarka Chelanchitam Sandrananda Puram Sadeka Varanam Vairagya Vidyam Buddhim Sri Siddhanta Nidhim Subhakti Lasitam Saraswatanam Varam Banditam Shubharam Mareka Sharanam Nyashishvara Sridharam Manshakopatarubyascha Kripasindubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahabaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gaurachavishe Namah. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, the hidden treasure of the sweet absolute, with translation and commentary by Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev-Goswami Maharaj, and with translation from Sanskrit and Bengali to English by Sripad Bhakti Ananda Sagar. And this is chapter 18, Moksha-yoga, the path of liberation. Arjuna vacha sannyas asya mahabaho tattvam ichami veditum tyaga cha rishikesha pritak keshinu nishudana. Arjuna said, O Almighty Lord, slayer of the demon Keshi, I wish to understand the subject of renunciation, sannyas, and detachment, tyaga, separately. Shri Bhagavan uvacha kamyanam karmanam nyasam sannyasam kavayo vidu sarva karma phalatyagam prahustyagam vichakshana. The Supreme Lord said, learned, enlightened persons know the giving up of fruitive action as renunciation, and the giving up of the fruits of all action as detachment. Supreme Lord said, learned and enlightened persons know the giving up of fruitive actions as renunciation, and the giving up of the fruits of all action as detachment. Tyajam doshavad iti eke karma prahur manishina yagyadana tapa karma natyajam iti chapare. Some philosophers hold that action should be renounced as imperfect. Others hold that action of the nature of sacrifice, charity, and austerity should never be given up. Now, all these subject matters can be understood when we consider, for instance, that there are persons who outwardly can show themselves as renounced, but at the same time inwardly can be very attached. On the other hand, there are persons who falsely renounce those activities which could be very beneficial to the service of the Lord. And so we can understand all these different subjects are going to be discussed here. When Srila Rupa Goswami, he spoke of how one can perform actions at the same time in the service of the Lord without attachment to the results. Yukta Vairagya. So Yukta Vairagya means that why should we renounce activities which will be beneficial to the service of the Lord? Of course, if one does not have the requisite, we can say, devotional mentality to be able to not become attached to the results, that may become another matter. That may lead to entanglement. And we see sometimes that happens. Persons will be performing devotional service and then they'll become attached to the results, whether if they go very favorably, they may become very elated, or if someone is trying to engage in some service, for instance, trying to serve Gurudev by collecting, but at the same time there's no results, one may become depressed by that. So the consideration of what is externally renunciation and what is really the point of renunciation, what means attachment, this should be very carefully considered. Therefore, we hear the words of falgu vairagya, of false show, a false show of renunciation. And we've heard that sometimes termed as the renunciation of, like a monkey. So because monkeys, we can see this is very appropriate, or was more appropriate some years ago, but there are persons who are fruitarians. They won't take anything. They won't even take any cooked products. They just eat raw foods. But basically, monkeys are eating raw foods. They're hand-picked foods, and like that. There's a renunciation of the monkeys. We can see that someone can be externally very renounced, but at the same time, we see that those who are markata vairagya is the term, monkey renunciation, markata vairagya, means also, like falgu vairagya, externally very renounced, but just like the renunciation of a monkey, no internal or inner development. So some philosophers hold that action should be renounced as imperfect. Others hold that action of the nature of sacrifice, charity, and austerity should never be given up. Nischayam shinu me tatra tyage bharata sattama tyago I purusha vyagra trivida samprakirtita. O best of the Bharatas, hear my perfect conclusion concerning detachment, the quality of renunciation. Since, O best of men, it has been clearly established that the quality of renunciation is of three types. O best of the Bharatas, hear my perfect conclusion concerning detachment, the quality of renunciation. Since, O best of men, it has been clearly established that the quality of renunciation is of three types. Yagya dana tapa karma natyajam karyam eva tat yagyo danam tapaschaiva pavanani manishinam. Actions of the nature of sacrifice, charity, and austerity should never be abandoned. They may be performed, for they are the purifiers of the wise. So previously Krishna said Some philosophers hold that action should be renounced as imperfect. Others hold that action of the nature of sacrifice, charity, and austerity should never be given up. So some persons, as it's mentioned there, some persons say that action should be renounced because it's imperfect. So then no action. But that is all very contrary to the nature of the soul. The soul is always active. Then also it's mentioned, others hold that action of the nature of sacrifice, charity, and austerity should never be given up. And that is true and is being confirmed here, but we also have to understand what is the nature of that sacrifice, charity, and austerity. So in this fifth verse, Yagya dana tapakarma natyajam karyameva tat yagyo danam tapaschaiva pavanani manishinam. Nischayam shrinume tatra tyage bharata sattama tyago I purusha vyagra trivida samprakirtita yagya dana tapat karma natyajam karyameva tat yagyo danam tapaschaiva pavanani manishinam. Best of Bharata is here my perfect conclusion concerning detachment, the quality of renunciation. Since, O best of men, it has been clearly established that the quality of renunciation is of three types. Action of the nature of sacrifice, charity, and austerity should never be abandoned. They must be performed, for they are the purifiers of the wise. Etani api tu karmani sangam tyaktva falani cha kartavya niti me parta nischita matam uttamam. Etani api tu karmani etanyapi tu karmani sangam tyaktva falani cha kartavya niti me parta nischitam matam uttamam. Actions of the nature, okay. But even these actions must be performed abandoning attachment and fruitive desire. O Partha, know this to be my perfect supreme conclusion. So, actions of the nature of sacrifice, charity, and austerity should never be abandoned. They must be performed, for they are the purifiers of the wise. But even these actions must be performed abandoning attachment and fruitive desire. O Partha, know this to be my perfect supreme conclusion. So sacrifice, yagyo vai Vishnu. Their sacrifices to be performed for the satisfaction of Krishna, for the Supreme Lord. Charity and austerity. We are not engaged, first of all, in false austerity. Nor are we giving charity to someone unworthy of charity. So actions of the nature of sacrifice, charity, and austerity should never be abandoned. They must be performed, for they are the purifiers of the wise. But even these actions must be performed abandoning attachment and fruitive desire. O Partha, know this to be my perfect supreme conclusion. The point is that all these actions are meant to be performed for the satisfaction of the Supreme. So we're trying to act within Krishna consciousness, and all our actions of sacrifice we're performing for the satisfaction of Krishna. Charity, we're also engaged in many ways of performing charity, but for instance, we're usually directing our vision of charity. For instance, once I was asked to purchase a fan for one sadhu. He was sitting in the heat and everything, so then it was discussed about getting that sadhu a fan. But I was also told, well, usually if we buy something new, then it will be given to Gurudev, and from Gurudev the results the previous, what he is having before, will be given as prasadam to the person. So we're giving in charity, but as I said, all our actions are meant to be approaching the higher plane. We're offering raw ingredients to the higher plane, and what we get from Gurudev is prasadam. So we're interested in performing charity, but we ultimately want that charity to have the highest benefit. Therefore, we're interested in giving charity rather than just bhog. And as austerity, this is also, austerity can be a very negative plane. That we have the plane of karma, which is negative, and then we also have the plane of gyan, which ultimately leads to austerity. But that also can be very negative because they are both based on the negation of the enjoying plane, just like Krishna talks about having attachment and renunciation. So renunciation can be a form of reaction to false attachment. We see that people, when they are frustrated in their attempts to gain something material, they can develop a mentality of austerity or renunciation, just like we heard the story of the fox that is jumping for the grapes and cannot reach them. But then he says afterwards, oh, they were sour anyway. So that's the kind of, we're not interested in that kind of false detachment or false renunciation, but rather we're interested in a different kind of engagement, which is said, Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojata Janayashu Vairagam Gyanam Chayata Haitukam. We're interested in Janayashu Vairagam Gyanam Chayata Haitukam. We're interested in that detachment and that knowledge which comes through engagements in the Lord's service, then rather just to be some form of theoretical knowledge. Instead of it becomes vigyan. Instead of just gyan, it becomes vigyan. It becomes, there's more a sense of having received some information from above. Janayat yashu vairagam jnanam chayata haitugam. Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojata. By engaging in devotional service, this kind of knowledge and this kind of detachment will automatically develop in one who is a good servitor. Niyatasya tu sannyasa karmano nopapadyate mohad tasya parityagas tamasa parikirtita. Renunciation of one's obligatory duties is wrong. The delusion of giving up these duties is called false renunciation or renunciation of the nature of ignorance. Renunciation of one's obligatory duties is wrong. The delusion of giving up these duties is called false renunciation or renunciation of the nature of ignorance. So, someone may give up obligatory duties because it is difficult, or maybe the person is lazy. So many reasons a person can give up obligatory duties. But there really has to be some requisite or proper consciousness for renunciation. We shouldn't be engaged in renunciation just on a mental level or a physical level that is too tiring, or is too tiring physically, or it is too tiring mentally. The delusion of giving up these duties is called false renunciation or renunciation of the nature of ignorance, renunciation of one's obligatory duties. Now there may be cases still where I heard one example that Srila Govinda Maharaj mentioned. I found it interesting. One man, he was a judge, and a man came before him, so I won't describe all the particulars, but I'll give the idea. A man came before the judge, and he was accused of abandoning properly taking care of his family. Now, that the man was previously a Hindu, but then he had experienced some inner change within him that caused him to change both his religion and his consciousness. And his previous attachment to his family was all on the basis of maintaining them, but according to the norms of the society. But that man, in his consciousness, he had changed his perspective on life completely, and he could no longer continue just mechanically with following the norms of society. So he argued to the judge, and he told to the judge, when a person's consciousness changes, there will naturally be some change in what he considers his obligations and duties. The interesting thing I found is Govinda Maharaj was explaining how Guru Maharaj commented because he had that conversation with the judge. And the judge concluded, I could not fault him for his argument. The judge could not fault him for his argument. The man had changed religion. The man had changed his consciousness. The man had changed his outlook on life. And therefore, he said he had to forcibly change his activities, even though they may have been according to the abandonment of the norms of society. And the judge said, I could not argue with him. Well, I found that interesting because here it's mentioned, renunciation of one's obligatory duties is wrong. The delusion of giving up these duties is called false renunciation or renunciation of the nature of ignorance. But an example I'm giving, it is not on the idea of giving up one's duty in terms of false renunciation, but there is a change in the perspective, a change in the consciousness that has led to a reconsideration of what is the person's duties. Anyway, so renunciation of one's obligatory duties is wrong. The delusion of giving up these duties is called false renunciation or renunciation of the nature of ignorance. Dukam iti yat karma, dukam iti eva yat, dukam iti eva yat karma, kaya klesha bhyayatyajit, sakritva rajasam tyagam naiva tyaga phalam labet. Dukam ityeva yat karma, kaya klesha bhyayatyajit, sakritva rajasam tyagam naiva tyaga phalam labet. One who abandons his obligatory duties out of fear of physical discomfort, considering them troublesome, performs renunciation of the nature of passion. Thus, he does not attain the fruit of true detachment. One who abandons his obligatory duties out of fear of physical discomfort, considering them troublesome, performs renunciation of the nature of passion. Thus, he does not attain the fruit of true detachment. Karyam iti eva yat karma niyatam kriyate Arjuna sangam tyaktva phalam chaiva satyaga satviko mata. Karyam ityeva yat karma niyatam kriyate Arjuna sangam tyaktva phalam chaiva satyaga satviko mata. O Arjuna, performance of obligatory works as a matter of duty while abandoning attachment and fruitive desire is renunciation of the nature of goodness. This is my opinion. So here we're hearing renunciation according to the mode of ignorance, according to the mode of passion, and the mode of goodness. Actions must be performed abandoning attachment and fruitive desire. O Partha, know this to be my perfect supreme conclusion. And we see that the devotees are able to perform activities abandoning attachment and fruitive desire because they know that actually all actions are to be performed for the satisfaction of the Lord. And if you haven't got any real idea of what actions are to be done and how to perform those actions, then you can get some guidance from Sri Guru, and you can offer the results to the Vaishnavas, and they will see that they're properly offered to the Lord. Then we heard of the renunciation in the mode of ignorance. Renunciation of one's obligatory duties is wrong. The delusion of giving up these duties is called false renunciation, or renunciation of the nature of ignorance. One has no idea why he's actually abandoning those activities, but he's thinking it is good to be renounced. So he'll renounce those activities which are meant to be performed for the satisfaction of the Lord and his devotees, but in the name of some kind of false renunciation, he will abandon those activities, thinking himself very renounced, but that renunciation is of the nature of ignorance. One who abandons his obligatory duties out of fear of physical discomfort, considering them troublesome, performs renunciation of the nature of passion. Thus he does not attain the fruit of true detachment. I remember one time Srila Prabhupada was talking, and one woman asked a question. This was in Mumbai. She asked a question. Well, she was talking about yoga, but she said, "But Swamiji, isn't yoga very taxing?" And Srila Prabhupada answered, "Madam, you're already being taxed in so many ways. Why not be taxed for something useful?" Or we would say something that is of actually worth some discomfort or some trouble. One who abandons one's obligatory duties out of fear of physical discomfort, considering them troublesome, performs renunciation of the nature of passion. Thus he does not attain the fruit of true detachment. O Arjuna, performance of obligatory works as a matter of duty while abandoning attachment and fruitive desire is renunciation of the nature of goodness. This is my opinion. So, karyamiti yeva yat karma niyatam kriyate Arjuna sangam tyaktva phalam chaiva satyaga satviko mata. O Arjuna, performance of obligatory works as a matter of duty while abandoning attachment and fruitive desire is renunciation of the nature of goodness. This is my opinion. So one performs one's duties, and at the same time one remains unattached to the results, and one is not considering whether he will suffer or enjoy the fruits, because he's offering everything to the Lord. This is one of the differences between karma yoga and bhakti yoga. Karma yoga, the whole everything, the mental consideration, the physical considerations, all considerations are on the plane of offerings to the Lord. So it's not just a matter of offering the result to the Lord, but the planning, the thought, the engagement, everything is done as a service to the Lord. Na dveshti akshalam karma kushale nanusyajate tyagi sattva samavishto medhavi china samshaya. The wise renunciant who is absorbed in the nature of goodness and who has slashed all doubts neither resents disagreeable duties nor is attached to agreeable works. The wise renunciant who is absorbed in the nature of goodness and who has slashed all doubts neither resents disagreeable duties nor is attached to agreeable works. So, there's so many things that are going on today in the whole vision of this planet. Things that are happening, and I feel the verses of the Bhagavad Gita are very pertinent to a consideration of how one can proceed in one's life. The wise renunciant who is absorbed in the nature of goodness and who has slashed all doubts neither resents disagreeable duties nor is attached to agreeable works. You can certainly see when we're acting in, you can say, the theater of the world, or by theater I mean the whole earth is a platform for our actions, or a stage for our actions. And we're acting and performing many things that may be the consideration of that which is agreeable or that which is disagreeable seems less and less of importance. But rather, we must act in the plane of Krishna consciousness and act in terms of what will be beneficial for our service and service of others, how we can serve the devotees, how we can serve the Lord, how we can serve the spiritual master. Really, those are the considerations. There may be other things that happen, but we can see more and more they become of less importance. Before, we could maybe become carried away by the activities of our mind or the activities of our senses, but actually less and less they're not going anywhere. They're not leading to anything. The only thing that is of importance is right here in terms of our service. So, na ideha brita sakyam, na hi deha brita shakyam chaktum karmani aseshata yastu karma phalatyagi nyatya giti abhidhiyate. Na ideha brita shakyam chaktum karmani aseshata yastu karma phalatyagi satyagiti abhidhiyate. It is not possible for the embodied soul to fully renounce actions. However, one who renounces the fruits of his actions is a true renunciant. It is not possible for the embodied soul to fully renounce actions. However, one who renounces the fruits of his actions is a true renunciant. So, we would always hear how, from the very beginning, Srila Prabhupada, he talked how one should give up meat eating, illicit sex, intoxication, and gambling. And we can hear that discussed in the Srimad Bhagavatam, where Maharaj Parikshit meets the personality of Kali. And Kali is looking for a place to stay and to perform his wrong activities, but he cannot find any place in Maharaj Parikshit's kingdom. Maharaj Parikshit finds him having how can we say it, having tortured a cow who's standing on one leg. Or is that torturing a bull who's standing on one leg? That bull represents Dharma. And the qualities of cleanliness, the qualities of austerity, quality of cleanliness, quality of austerity, quality of truthfulness, quality of religiosity, they're being lost in this Kali Yuga. And yet Maharaj Pariksit is a perfect king. He will not allow the personality of Kali to have a place in his kingdom. So he says to Kali, you cannot, you can only be where there is meat eating, illicit sex, intoxication, or gambling. That's what Maharaj Pariksit says to Kali. But Kali replies that, but I cannot find any of those activities going on in your kingdom, and yet I need some shelter. I'm begging you, please give me some shelter. Then Maharaj Pariksit says, all right, I will give you one place where you can stay then, and that is where gold is being hoarded. Or we can say where so much wealth is being hoarded and kept for just one's own enjoyment. And Maharaj Pariksit says, where there is the hoarding of wealth, there you'll also find these other activities. So where there is a hoarding of wealth, you can stay there. Now, Srila Govinda Maharaj, he would comment in a humorous way that Prabhupada mentioned no meat eating, no illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling. But he didn't so much talk about where wealth, he didn't talk about money, where money is being accumulated. And this was said in a humorous way where Govinda Maharaj said, because Prabhupada knows that to run or to progress in a preaching mission and to spread Krishna consciousness, some wealth is required, some income, some expenditures must be covered. So Govinda Maharaj would joke that Prabhupada didn't talk about, he talked about these other four principles, but he didn't talk so much about where Kali could stay, where wealth or gold was being hoarded, because Prabhupada knew that it is necessary to draw some help from those who are, we can say, merchant, or those persons who are having access to wealth. That would be necessary. Of course, Govinda Maharaj, as I'm saying, he said it as a joke, but that it also comes down to this, where it says here, it is not possible for the embodied soul to fully renounce actions. However, one who renounces the fruits of his actions is a true renunciate. So there, the fruits of one's hard-earned wealth, or one works hard and gets some money in return, the real proper utilization of one's income or one's wealth will be to renounce the fruits of his actions. In other words, to utilize what one is earning for the service of the Lord. And that's natural. After Rupa and Sanatan came to the mission, they had been in the employment of the Nawab Hussain Shah, the Muslim king, and Rupa Goswami had wealth, and he came to Mahaprabhu's lotus feet, so he distributed that wealth. He gave he gave half to the Vaishnavas, to the temples, to the Brahmins. He kept a quarter of the wealth for emergency. Ultimately, in this case, it was to free his elder brother, Sanatan Goswami, from imprisonment. And he also kept 1/4 for his family members like that. So again, how one's income, how one's wealth is to be used. It is not possible for the embodied soul to fully renounce actions. However, one who renounces the fruits of his actions is a true renunciant. So one can utilize the fruit of one's action, in this case, terms of one's income. One can utilize that to serve the Lord. It doesn't have to be falsely renounced. And I'll read another verse here. Anishtam ishtam mishram cha trividam karmana phalam bhavati adhyaginam pretya natu sannyasinam kvachit. Anishtam ishtam mishram cha trividam karmana phalam bhavati adhyaginam pretya natu sannyasinam kvachit. After death, the three kinds of fruits of actions, good, bad, and mixed, accrue to those who have worldly desires, but never to those who are renounced. After death, the three kinds of fruits of actions, good, bad, and mixed, accrue to those who have worldly desires, but never to those who are renounced. So, as I remember, so I'll repeat this verse, Sanskrit. Anishtam ishtam mishram cha trividam karmana phalam bhavati adhyaginam pretyan natu sannyasinam kvachit. After death, the three kinds of fruits of actions, good, bad, and mixed, accrue to those who have worldly desires, but never to those who are renounced. So obviously, after death, not everything is ending with just simply the end of one's body, but still one's karma will go on. The fruits of actions, good, bad, and mixed, accrue to those who have worldly desires, but never to those who are renounced. And notice that that karma will ultimately take one to another material body to enjoy the results of one's actions. So one should be a little careful in what actions one performs. It doesn't end with death, as it's just mentioned very clearly here. After death, the three kinds of fruits of actions, good, bad, and mixed, accrue to those who have worldly desires, but never to those who are renounced. The devotees are not concerned. Bhakti Vinod Thakur says that, my Lord, I'm not concerned about liberation. He says, if I have to take birth again, then let me take birth in the house of a devotee. Even if by taking birth in the house of a devotee, it may be as a dog or an insect. That is all right, but as long as I'm in the association of the devotees. So obviously one cannot just say that the death is the final act and everything is ending. There will still be the results of one karma, whether good, bad, or mixed, they will accrue to one. Bhakti Vinod Thakur says, I'm not concerned about that. All I'm concerned about is having the association of the Vaishnavas. That may I be born in the house of a Vaishnava. Even if I am born as a dog in the house of a Vaishnava, that's not so bad. A Vaishnava's dog he will get good association. he will get prasadam. Even an insect in the house of a Vaishnava, that will not be bad. So our concern is not enjoying the fruits of our actions even after death. Rather, we are only interested in how we can be of some service to the Vaishnavas. So I'm going to end here. We'll sing Hari Harai. Hari Harai Nama Krishna Jadavaya Nama Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama Gopa Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinatham Mananaman Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra Garanara Shiva Sadi Gora Bhakta Vrinda Jai Rupa Sanatan Bhakta Raguna Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raguna Chai Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan Jai Te Vignana Shabishta Puran Chai Gosai Jarmuri Charadas Kansavar Padarenu Mora Panchagas Kadir Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanibas Janame Shaname More Abhilash Chai Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Prakash Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavan Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Majjayiyaman Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyan Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Naratamada Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Nitai Gora Haribo 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 Nitai Gora Haribo 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 Jai Saparikara Shishi Guru Garanga Gandharvika Giridhari Ju Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajaka Charyasta Tara Sadashi Shrimad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev-Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajaka Charya Astatara Sadashi Shrimad Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev-Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarva Bhoma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai Namachari Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Das Raghunath Shad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai Premsigo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudhi Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur Ki Jai Srinivas Narottam Shamananda Prabhu Ki Jai Vishvavaranya Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Nirmal Acharya Maharaj Ki Jai Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Madhacharya Vrinda Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Sri Navadip Dham Ki Jai Sri Dham Mayapur Ki Jai Saparshada Sri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai Saparshada Sri Mahaprabhu Ki Jai Shri Koladvip Ki Jai, Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai, Soquel Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Sevashram Ki Jai, Ganga Devi Ki Jai, Tulasi Maharani Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Govardhan, Shyam Kunda Radha Kunda Kalindi Yamuna Jo Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, all the assembled devotees Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.
Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Pavan Janardan Maharaj Ki Jai. Akshri Priya says Dandavats D.H. Das. Dandavats Govinda Figuera.
All right.
Guerra.
Did you end the class?
Leelamdari Dandavats and Nancy Vyano Hari Priya says Dandavat Maharaj.